Thanks for joining me on episode 504 of the Inspired Stewardship Podcast.
I'm Paulson from Kara. I challenge you to discover your true identity and calling so you can be empowered to live every day to the fullest. One way to be inspired to do that is to listen to this, the Inspired Stewardship Podcast with my friend Scott Mader.
When you've gotten rid of that limiting belief, you can re-examine your life again, and odds are really good you'll find a whole new set of limiting beliefs because we've all got them at all levels. I don't care how successful you see somebody, they've still got things that are holding them back. We've always got work to do. This is part of how we're made. It's part of the journey that we're on. Welcome and thank you for joining us on the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. If you truly desire to become the person who God wants you to be, then you must learn to use your time, your talent, and your treasures for your true calling. In the Inspired Stewardship Podcast, you will learn to invest in yourself, invest in others, and develop your influence so that you can impact the world. In today's episode about investing in others through stewarding your talent, I talk with you about what are limiting beliefs, how you can identify your limiting beliefs, and what you can do about them. You've heard me talk about developing your talent, and one of the best ways to do that is through books. But if you're like most people today, it's hard to find the time to read, and that's why today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Go to inspiredstewardship.com/audible to sign up, and you can get a 30-day free trial. There's over 180,000 titles to choose from, and you can pick one and listen your way to developing your talents via Audible. That's inspiredstewardship.com/audible to get your free trial and listen to great books the same way you're listening to this podcast. Limiting beliefs. I've talked about this before on the podcast because the truth is this is an area where we all have them. We've all got beliefs in our life, voices that speak inside of our head and our heart that tell us that something is true when in reality it's not necessarily the truth. We've all got things and beliefs and core things deep down inside of us, voices that have talked to us for years, and we've heard that same story over and over in our head until we just believe it's true, even though it may not be. And the truth is, these negative thoughts are often things that we don't even know are there. We haven't even identified the belief at the core. Some of these limiting beliefs are minor things and some are major. But we need to begin to identify the ones that are the biggest things that hold us back and begin to work to change those. So how do you begin to identify your limiting beliefs? Remember, I said these are things that are held so deeply at your core that you almost don't even know that they're there, and yet they are. So how can you find them if they're so deep inside you that they're core, meaningful beliefs? The first thing is begin to look at the areas of your life. You remember back on Monday, we talked about the 7 areas of life: spiritual, intellectual, physical, emotional, relational, recreational, health, work, career. As you look at these areas, think about the ones where you're struggling. Think about the ones where there's things going on that you don't enjoy, that you don't like, where things are less than perfect or even less than growing. And begin to look at those where you're actively doing things, you're working on them. Maybe you're struggling in your intellectual area, but you're continuing to work on it. You're reading, you're growing, you're learning, you're going back to school, you're doing something to better yourself. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for an area of your life where you're struggling, but you just seem to believe that there's nothing you can do about it. There's no action that you can take that would change your situation. And when you find an area like that, odds are really good that that behavior, that non-action, is coming out of a core limiting belief. So if you think about your finances, are you struggling in your financial area? Are you struggling with believing that you'll never have enough money, you'll never get out of debt, you'll never be able to buy the things that you really want? That's a limiting belief. Are you struggling in your relationships? I'll never find a partner who loves me. That's a limiting belief. Are you struggling taking care of yourself, your health? Are you struggling enjoying your life? Whatever it is, when you think about those areas of your life, if there's areas where you're struggling and you're not actively trying to grow in those areas, then begin to write out your limiting beliefs. This is where journaling takes a good active role, where you can sit down and just brain dump, write everything you believe about money, write everything that you believe about your health, write everything that you believe about your relationships. Just start writing and look for patterns. Look for ways that these beliefs begin to have patterns of good beliefs and negative beliefs. And what you're trying to highlight is the negative beliefs, the ones that say, I'll never be wealthy. Anyone who has money must have gotten it by stealing it. I'll never be able to have a partner who really loves me. My friends will never actually care for me as much as I care for them. Look for the negative patterns and begin to identify which of these would actually help you to change. And once you identify some of those, begin to reconstruct and deconstruct the belief. To actively get rid of a negative belief, there is a process that you can use. Write the belief down. Make a list. On the left-hand side of the page, write the limiting belief. On the right-hand side, write the enabling truth. And then begin to read the limiting belief and instead read the enabling truth in response. Identify where the belief came from. Who was it that spoke to you this thing? Oftentimes we hear the voice of somebody from our past telling us this. And then think, was this person really an expert in this area? Was this someone who had facts to back it up, or were they simply passing their own belief on to you? Recognize that you can choose to not believe this anymore. You can begin to look for a new pattern, look for new information, look for new facts, look for things that disprove your belief. If you believe that you'll never have a relationship that's good, find the one example of a relationship in your life that is good, because odds are really good you've got one. If you recognize that you don't have any relationships that are good, ask yourself instead, what's the smallest step I can take? What have I been doing that's been causing the relationships to be bad? How can I stop doing that? What can I do differently? If you believe that wealth is evil, look around and find examples of where wealth has actually done good in the world. Begin to look for examples that disprove your limiting belief and instead prove the enabling truth. And then read those each and every day. Begin to set goals that directly counter that limiting belief. If you believe you can't make money, work to make a little more money. If you believe you can't have good relationships, work to have just a tinier, better relationship tomorrow. And then just rinse and repeat. Continue to do that over time. And what you'll begin to discover is slowly over time, that limiting belief will break down. And here's the really fun part. When you've gotten rid of that limiting belief, you can re-examine your life again, and odds are really good you'll find a whole new set of limiting beliefs, because we've all got them at all levels. I don't care how successful you see somebody, they've still got things that are holding them back. We've always got work to do. This is part of how we're made. It's part of the journey that we're on. So work on reducing your limiting beliefs and then examine them again and do it again. And over time, you'll begin to grow and transform your mind, your body, your soul, and your spirit. And you'll achieve more than you ever believed you could. Thanks for listening. Thanks so much for listening to the Inspired Stewardship podcast. As a subscriber and listener, we challenge you to not just sit back and passively listen, but act on what you've heard and find a way to live your calling. If you like this episode on the stewardship of talent, you can go over to inspiredstewardship.com/talent and sign up for our 5-week series on the stewardship of talent. Or if you're in the U.S., you can text 44222 talent tips. That's talent tips to 44222 and get those tips. Until next time, invest your time, your talent, and your treasures. Develop your influence and impact the world.